licensed through FWC. Everybody familiar with Florida Fish and Wildlife?
Yes.
I'm also a nurse and for people, and I throw all of my nursing skills into what I do, and it gives me a great advantage. Rehabbing wild rabbits. Wild rabbits are one of the hardest mammals to rehab out of all the mammals. And back when I decided to get licensed through the state, I found out fairly quickly that the wild rabbits didn't have anybody. And I was finding that some of the public would be either completely confused as to what to do, but sadly, some of the other rehabbers that were already licensed, I was hearing, oh, I'm not taking in those rabbits. They always die on me. And I thought, this isn't good. You know, this is not a good situation. So long story short, I quickly cut out calling, I guess, in life. And that was to take on these wild rabbits. So Florida has 2 types of rabbits, actually technically 3, but the 3rd type live down in the Keys. So I don't usually count them because we don't see them around, but Florida has 2 types of rabbit, the 2 types that I deal with, and that is the eastern cottontail, which is the ones you usually see around, and the 2nd type is called the Florida marsh rabbits, not to be confused with swamp rabbits. That's another different type that some of the other states have. We don't have them. We have the marsh rabbits. After you've looked at a number of rabbits like I have, wild rabbits, you can spot them a mile away. A surefire way to tell whether you have an eastern cottontail or a Florida marsh rabbit is the Florida marsh rabbits have a brown tail. They do not have the white tail, the white cottontail. And then there's other, in my world, very noticeable differences. Their appendages are shorter. They have shorter ears. Their face is shaped a little bit different. I call them chocolate bunnies because they're darker in color. One other thing to make a note of is that both types of rabbits are excellent swimmers. And even our domestic rabbits, most of them, I'm not going to say every one of them, but most of them are also excellent swimmers as well. Rabbits are good swimmers. Surprisingly. It's very surprising. Yes. So I get asked, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, what do I do if I find a rabbit's nest in my yard? Well, there's actually some things that you can do. I am all for trying to keep families together. I don't want mama to lose her babies. I don't want them coming into me unnecessarily or, other rehabbers. So first and foremost, I have to make this announcement. And I don't want you to think that I'm a cat hater because I do not hate cats. But cats are one of the worst animals that are let loose, and they do a job on our wildlife. They decimate our wildlife. They don't mean to, but cats naturally tend to play with things until they don't move anymore. And by that time, they're usually dead. When I have a cat attacked baby come into me, it absolutely, within a certain window of time, has to go on antibiotics because the saliva in a cat's mouth is so toxic to our wildlife, and in particular our rabbits, that within 3 days that baby's going to be dead. And it's the saddest thing to to watch that process take place. It's horrible. Um, so if you know that there's been a tangle with a cat, even if it's been questionable if that baby's been in a cat's mouth or in contact with the saliva of a cat, make sure you get on the phone and call a wildlife rehabber right away, because there's a window of time that they have to be put on antibiotics. And if they miss that window of time, it's too late, because that saliva gets absorbed into their body and it starts poisoning the babies. So, yes, yes. Now a dog, when dogs get into a tangle with baby bunnies, this isn't the nicest thing to say, but they tend to like kind of, first of all, their saliva isn't toxic like it is with rabbits. It's different. Dogs tend to like to kind of, sometimes, depending on the type of dog, there are some that have what they call a soft mouth, and they like to hold things. These particular dogs like to just kind of hold things. Then there's other types of dogs that they kind of will crunch down. So I have more injuries that way with bunnies than with some of the other types of dogs. But as far as if you find a rabbit's nest, you're going to see a depression in the earth, in your grass. You're probably going to see like a dead spot of grass, and that's where the nest is. It's usually like dead grass that you're going to see in a spot. Mother rabbits sometimes decide to pick great big dogs' yards, fenced in, and they will make their nest right smack in the middle of that yard. Why? It just makes me wonder why. I don't know, other than maybe she feels that because all of that area smells like the dogs, that maybe it'll keep the predators overhead away from her nest. That's the only thing I've come up with. So you're going to see a patch of dead grass, kind of usually in a little circle, and underneath the babies are down. The mother first she digs down a little bit, maybe up to about 6 inches, I'd say. It's not real deep. And what she does is she will pluck fur from her chest and her stomach, and she'll line that little indentation in the ground in her nest. She's building her nest. And believe it or not, the fur from her chest and her stomach is enough that it insulates and helps to keep those babies warm. And so she gives birth to the babies, and they have her fur, and then she covers everything with grass. And of course, the grass it's gonna die, so the grass becomes dead grass, and that's what you're gonna see on the top. So lots of times now the mother will come to the nest about every 12 hours. She doesn't sit on the nest like a chicken does. So those babies are by themselves for up to 12 hours at a time in between meal times, which is amazing that they can survive that long, which means that the mother's milk is one of the most nutritious in the animal kingdom. It's extremely high in fat content, and it's that fat content that holds those babies over in between the meals. which when they come into me, I have to try to make that up. And it's not so easy because we only have man-made formulas. We don't have any real rabbit formula to use. But the formulas that I use, they come from Australia. They're expensive. They're quite exotic. And because of all the time and the effort that I put into them, I don't deal with, if you look up on the internet, they're going to tell you to use kitten replacement milk, KMR. Forget it. There's not nearly enough fat content to ever sustain a baby rabbit on that formula. Maybe for a day or two, maybe. But other than that, it's going to be a disaster. Okay, so lots of times we have, inadvertently, we have lawnmowers that will go over a dead spot, not knowing that that's actually a rabbit's nest. And I get a lot of calls like that. Sometimes there's injuries that happen to the babies. Long story short, if you're able to locate a rabbit's nest in your yard, what we try to do is tell people that you can take a laundry basket and you can tip it upside down, and just as long as the mother can scoot underneath that laundry basket. So we ask you to try to put it up on some bricks, but you need to weight the top of it down so it doesn't blow over, or, it's going to stay put. So we try to get you to put some bricks on top of the laundry basket and elevate it with some bricks. Or you can take a knife or a scissors or whatever, and you can cut a little door out of the laundry basket, as long as mama can get to her babies. Now, the way the babies feed, they're down underneath the nest, or in the nest. So when mama comes, she's only at that nest for about 5 minutes. That's it. And those babies feed very quickly. In fact, sometimes they're not quite done, and mama decides, that's it, we're done. She comes and she will stand like this over the nest. So the babies, they stick their little heads up through the grass, the dead grass, and they will suckle on her while she's standing over the nest. And that's how they feed. It's really something to see. It's actually quite beautiful. So after she's decided, that's it, they're done, she's off again. Now, you may never see the mother. The mother watches that nest all day long, but you may never see her. She will hide. You're talking about high prey animals. These rabbits are food for so many other creatures that they're on guard all day long. So, which is partly why the mother stays away from the nest like she does. She does not want to give that nest away. She will give up her life for that nest. So, it's really quite amazing how wildlife really works. I've been doing this over 10 years now. I still get amazed at some of the things that I still discover. I learn all the time. I do a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of networking with other rehabbers and other FWC officers and whatever. Anyway, it just became a very good fit for me to take on the wild rabbit population in Florida. And it's been rewarding. It's really been something. It's been challenging. There's, it's not all, I have my cases. I had a tough one last week. I had an adult rabbit that got stuck in a fence. I have it on my Facebook page, and unfortunately, she ended up with a dislocated femur, which, do you know what a femur is? It's a leg bone. Part of her leg bone was really messed up. And it was so messed up that to have an orthopedic surgeon, vet, specialist to try to address this with no guarantees, we were talking an estimate of $2,000. So, given that this rabbit was already at a particular age, wild rabbits, they're not like the domestic pet rabbits. They might as well be completely different species. Their average lifespan is about 2 years, if they make it that far, as opposed to 8 to 12 years like pet rabbits. So, very different. So, to take everything into consideration, I could have kept her. I could have applied to FWC for a special licensure for her to live out the rest of her remaining days with me under a Class 3 license. But honestly, to think about this wild rabbit that doesn't belong in a cage to be living the rest of its natural life that it had left in an enclosure, it was unfair. So I had to make a tough decision, and I decided to go ahead, and she was put to sleep. And it's hard. Some of it's hard to do. And then there's the cases that you see success and they go on to live, have another whole second chance at life. It's just wonderful. There's nothing better. So anyway, I hope that you learned something with trying to keep families together. And there's ways of protecting them, helping to protect the mother's nest so that she can continue to raise her own babies and they don't have to come into me. Because as soon as there's any wildlife that comes into rescue, I don't care what mammal it is, it's approximately, their chances drop to about 50%. They can die of a condition called capture myopia, which rabbits in particular are such sensitive creatures that they can make themselves so scared that they can actually give themselves a heart attack. And I've had it happen. I've had it happen right in front of me. And there's nothing sadder than to have an animal, that's been injured or whatever, and you take them so far on their journey, and all of a sudden they get it in their head that for some particular reason, because they're prey animals, they just decide, oh my God, I'm so scared. And their body starts this process of this going into this capture myopia. And it becomes, it affects their muscles. It's a whole process that happens. It's horrible to watch. And they can pass right in front of you. So there's quite a bit to trying to rehab wild rabbits. There's not that many people that specialize in them in the state. I do. I guess it's a calling that God must have had for me someplace along the lines, along with my nursing, and it's been a good fit. And I found it challenging and very rewarding, and I've met some really cool people like yourselves. And we really need to have people that can advocate for trying to keep, first of all, trying to keep people from releasing cats outside at night to go hunting and whatever. We try to encourage people to look into like catios that their cats can enjoy outside, but still keep everybody safe. And we just try to educate people on how important our wildlife is. They're gifts.